All right, welcome back to the Fuse Show, everybody. My name is Bud. I am an account executive here at xfusion.io and co-host of the Fuse Show. I am excited to be joined today by my guest, James Sampson. James is the founder and CEO of FileInvite, an award-winning SaaS company helping companies request information and documentation from their clients. With 20 years of experience growing digital companies, James is a multi-exit founder, passionate about tech startups, people, and entrepreneurship. James, thanks for being on the show, my friend.
No worries. It's great to be here, bud.
All right. So before we get talking about FileInvite, I just want to go over a couple things. First, seems like you are what I call a serial entrepreneur, and you have been ever since you were a kid, from what I can read and from the research that I've done. It kind of started when you were a boy, from buying old skateboards from your friends, fix them up, selling them back to skate shops. Where do you think that came from? I had an old guest. Well, one of my guests before said that entrepreneurs are the jocks of the business world, and that kind of rings true, as in, like, they just are made different, right? Entrepreneurs are just made different, and kind of like Mark Cuban just started when they were young and just had something in them where they just wanted to do something and make money and be in it from the beginning. And that kind of sounds like you. Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely agree. I think that it's makeup. You're wired a certain way, and I think for me, I just always loved building stuff. Making something out of nothing, or trying to improve on things. So, would always be looking for ways that I could take something and improve it. And I guess that segued into, as a teenager, you're trying to, find a few bucks to be able to augment what you're doing, and that probably led into the skateboard thing. But there are entrepreneurs in the family, not directly, in terms of my parents were pretty standard, hardworking, middle class parents, gave me a great upbringing. But starting and running businesses wasn't a huge part of my upbringing. But a little bit further afield, there's some reasonably successful businesses in the aunts and uncles, or further up the family tree. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's an itch that you have to scratch, and it's just kind of different for everyone. But yeah, it's just something I've always loved doing, and trying to build stuff.
Nice.
Make the world a better place.
Nice. Right on. Okay, so now my next question is, how did we get to FileInvite? Because I'm looking at your LinkedIn. You go to school for architecture, and then you start with, you co-found Wall Candy, you go to Property Billboard. Like, I can usually see kind of a linear way that people get to where they are, but I have a hard time putting the pieces together for how you get from where you were to where you are now. So can you kind of walk me on the steps to how you get from going to architecture school to how you get to FileInvite? Let's take those steps, and then we'll talk about FileInvite.
Yeah, good. It's a journey with a few twists and turns. So I think, going right back, I guess, back to that kid at school who was selling skateboards. I don't think any kid really knows what they want to do properly. Some are lucky enough to really know, but I think somewhere along the line, someone said, "Oh, you'd make a great architect because you can draw straight lines." So I was like, "Oh, cool, okay, I'll be an architect." So went to architecture school, but in the background, I always loved tech, and I got my first, computer way back, and I'm showing my age, but way back in the late 80s. It didn't even have a hard drive, twin 5 1/4 floppy drives, orange screen with a spreadsheet burnt into it. Mm-hmm. And, I just loved tech way back then. I sort of learnt programming, and so I had this dual thing going where I was actually studying architecture and had a passion for tech in the background, and would be building websites or figuring out how to do websites and building them for friends in the evenings, that type of thing. So that kind of culminated at the end of my degree, where I ended up actually founding my first company and going out on my own. I think halfway through the degree, I figured out, like, this really isn't me, but I'd spent enough time and effort, and so I just knuckled down and finished it. And so, yeah, actually started a sort of freelance web design business in my final year of college. So went out and did that for a while, and then we actually were talking just before the show about our long-standing marriages. I got married in my last year of college as well, so that was a big year. And so my co-founder was actually my wife on Wall Candy. It was like an outdoor artwork product. She had she was working in display and that type of thing. So that's kind of where that came about. We went on to sell that, and then I guess the architecture and the tech came together with Property Billboard, where myself and another co-founder, we built essentially a property listing website. So it kind of brought those two worlds together a little bit, and that went really well up until the GFC. So GFC hit, and we dialed things back, and actually I went contracting for 6 months to clear our heads, and it just kind of ticked along, and we ended up selling that one about 10 years after that, because it was passive, just kept on ticking and building in the background. But in the interim, that's when I kind of came back right to the web side of things. And so my co-founder in Property Billboard, we co-founded a web design agency from what we'd learned. That's Zyber. So yeah, that was probably the largest success at that time. We built that as a really high growth web agency. We were winning awards, Deloitte Fast 50 down here. I think it's different numbers around the world, but generally a kind of a high growth index. And yeah, man, that was a ride. We grew really rapidly, and we were building 200 websites at a time. So we had a real problem inside that business of how do you collect all of the content assets to build websites? You know, the homepage images, the photos, the text, the videos, all that type of thing. When you've got 200 sites that the company is building, you'd be running spreadsheets and tracking them with phone calls, trying to chase them. It was a complete headache. So we built a tool inside Zyber to manage that, and it just absolutely revolutionized the project management inside of that. And so as Zyber really took off, we got it to fully managed inside 5 years with with exec staff, that type of thing. And I'd really wanted to have a product company, like a service company was awesome, and it was doing really well, but a product. So we looked at what we had, and FileInvite was really born out of that tool of chasing clients for all of the content assets that we needed. So spun that out, and FileInvite was born. So yeah, it's kind of not completely linear path, but this is sort of interlinking along the way there somewhere.
Yeah, no, I love that, and it's great because this program is watched by founders and people that want to become founders, and it's nice because it just shows that there's so many different paths to get to where you want to be, or that you not necessarily thought that you were going to be, or there's just so many ways to get there. You thought, hey, somebody said I was good at building stuff, so I'm going to become an architect. And halfway through that, you're like, this isn't for me, but I'm going to finish it. But I still like tech, and so it took you several years, but you got to where you wanted to be. So just don't give up on what you want to do, and you'll get there. Like, you don't have to follow somebody else's path. Follow yours, stick to it. And you can get there. It's a great story.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's something to be said for just, getting stuck in and finishing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much research and evidence that 90% of success is execution and just grit and determination and following stuff through. So, I think for anyone who's listening and wanting to start something, just give it a go. You can never know how the path is going to unfold, and there's definitely going to be twists and turns. But that's part of the fun and the journey, right? And there's going to be some amazing highs. There's going to be some deep lows. But most of it is just building some awesome people around you to go on that journey. And I guess part of the story, which picks up from where I stopped really on the FileInvite side, was I had a co-founder up to that point, and around about that time when we spun out FileInvite, my co-founder from Zyber, who had been a co-founder in FileInvite, there was no animosity at all, but he was kind of doing some soul searching and was like, well, like this slow burn SaaS growth, one foot in front of the other, is probably going to be a bit soul destroying for him. He's just a real quick wins, hustler and dealer profile. I was more of the, like I said, like to build things, and by definition, I'm a technical founder, so I was very much the technical co-founder in previous businesses. So at that point, I actually bought him out as founder from FileInvite and went on that journey on my own as a single CEO from that point on. That was probably about a year or so into it, and that was probably one of the biggest journeys for me. Those first couple of years after a decade or more of having co-founders, or definitely more actually, going on a journey to be a single sole CEO founder, and building that team around you that can execute and go on the journey and experience the highs and experience the lows is just critical to business and executing. So definitely some big learnings in there, and that was a journey. But that was sort of 6 years ago now, so we're well down the path.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, crazy. Good story, man. Good story. Okay, let's get into FileInvite. What do you do? And we kind of got in a little bit to why you started it, but we can delve into a little bit more of what that actual pain point was and why you actually really needed to start FileInvite. But what is it? Yeah,
so like we sort of touched on a little bit, it's around, it replaces email for requesting client information. So just about every business has a CRM, and almost all of them are using email when they have to say, hey, can you send me this? Can you send me a copy of that? Can you sign these forms? Can you complete these documents? It's all happening over email still. And that's kind of crazy. We all get those emails that come through. And so, FileInvite completely replaces that and tees into whatever your back office system is, your CRM or your internal system. And it gives the client a seamless portal where they can see everything that needs to be supplied. They can fill out those forms. They can take photos on their smartphone. They can even, authorize third-party data feeds to send data through, all of that type of thing. And it all flows back into the business. So think of it like a data ingestion engine for your business. And it gets documents out of email. Slack took office communication out of email. We're taking documents out of email. So, and you've heard the origin story already in terms of where the idea came from, but that's really what it's about.
Nice. So
we get,
No, go ahead.
Sorry, but I was going to say, often a use case is helpful in terms of we get used a lot for lending, mortgage, that type of thing, getting all the documents through, but also in immigration, accounting, legal, professional services, anything where a business has to get a lot of information off their clients.
So I can see this helping, well, and you said like lending, right? So banks, it holds everything in one place so they don't have to go back through a bunch of, say, like email threads to find everything that they need to find for each client. It holds everything in one spot, so they can just pull up the client's name and have everything there. Is that what I'm gathering? Like it just holds everything there. The client has that all in one space, so they can fill everything out, and the business has everything in that one spot, so that they don't have to search for hours or days to find where they had that email thread where they were asking for everything. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. So, I would send you a file invite, but if I needed to get something off you, and you'd get an email or a link on SMS, you'd go through into that, and you'd be able to see all of the requests of what's needed. So you could upload all the documents, you could fill out all those forms, anything that need to be supplied. So you get a seamless experience on your end. There's not backwards and forwards of emails and resending stuff, emails bouncing, things too big to be sent through email, all that type of thing. And then on the business side, on my side, it's a full workflow, so I can see what you've supplied me, what you haven't. I can make revisions on that. I can approve or decline things and say, hey, we need a different version of that bud. And then that would all flow through into my cloud storage, my CRM, renaming all the files. So getting that whole kind of clunky fishing through email threads, trying to save attachments out of there, it's all just a seamless process. So it's absolutely changing the way banks are requesting information for lending, opening new accounts, AML, all that type of stuff is just completely seamless. Customers are loving it. The end clients are loving it because they get one place where they can do everything. They can see what's being requested, and we're seeing amazing improvements in terms of productivity. The businesses are saving 70 to 80% of time requesting and chasing documents. The clients are getting things back 2 to 3 times faster. And the security is infinitely more secure because every attachment you've ever sent someone is still in someone's inbox right now. And so just by virtue of not having documents in email, that whole crazy risk is averted because email is now the number one vector for cybersecurity breaches. So, it's just a whole range of benefits all around and going gangbusters.
Why do you think it took so long for this to be? I mean, it's probably always been a pain point, but why do you think it took so long for this to get fixed? Like, why? Yeah. I mean, it seems really pretty simple.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one of those problems that's just hiding in plain sight, right? Things like, calendar scheduling, Calendarly, it's like a amazing tool that solves a problem that existed for decades beforehand, that type of thing. I think we're also attached to email that we almost just run on autopilot and use email for everything. And, it's one of those things where people don't think about there being a better way because they've just done it this way for so long. And, when people see FileInvite as a solution, they're like, oh my gosh, where have you been all my life? This is amazing and a massive pain point for us. But, people are just sort of going through the motions of what they do and don't think about, hey, there could be a better way of getting this information off clients because they've just used email for decades. So I think it's just one of those, hiding in plain sight problems that people are so numb to that they haven't thought about there being a better way.
Right. We just been doing it and being frustrated with it and being like, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll just do it and be frustrated with it. Have you seen, with the pandemic hitting in, the end of 2019, early 2020, did you see a major uptick in your business? Because people haven't been, weren't able to go into, say, like banks and stuff to fill out paperwork. Everybody was being locked down in different parts of the world. Did your business skyrocket at that point? Were banks and especially I'm guessing banks were they saying, hey, we've got to find a different way to do this? Did you see a huge increase in your business at that point?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think there was a huge spike around March, April last year when the pandemic really bit and people had to all just work from home. All of a sudden, businesses were faced with the problem of arming their staff with better remote working tools. So we saw a huge spike then. It came off that big spike, and then I think it settled down at generally a higher level of interest than before the pandemic. So I think what we saw is people were dealing with the issue before. When the pandemic hit, it really forced people's hands. They had to act quickly, and we had some really short sales cycles on some large companies that, before the pandemic would have taken, months and months, and they were putting stuff in within weeks. But then after that, I think people are like, okay, well, we've that the burning platform issue has been resolved. Now let's do it properly. So overall interest is definitely up from before the pandemic. But before the pandemic, there was drivers anyway. I think the privacy regime that's sweeping the world globally with privacy legislation. Every country just about has updated their privacy legislation in the last 2 to 3 years. And we see that with, the CCPA and Euro GDPR, all that type of stuff. And generally, privacy as a topic there's a much greater awareness. So that's been a driver because you think about sensitive information passing through email. There's a high duty of care now, and then things like AML, anti-money laundering legislation, that type of thing. That's getting more and more globally as well, and that's driving even more requests for information and documentation globally. So 3 pretty big drivers for our business in terms of privacy, AML, KYC, and then of course the pandemic. So we were lucky enough to be on the winning side of some of the drivers from the pandemic as opposed to the other side.
Yeah. I mean, it's the pandemic was unfortunate for a lot of people, and it caused a lot of pain and hurt for a lot of people. But I mean, on the flip side of that, it was also a driver for a lot of good. I mean, a lot of good came out of that in certain sectors, and you just can't get around that part of it either. Like, there was a lot of good that came out of it for businesses, certain businesses, and the way that people do business, and the way that businesses treat their people now is different, and the way that businesses think about mental health is different. And I mean, just a lot of good has come out of what happened with that pandemic. So, I mean, with the bad comes the good. Absolutely. I mean, there's a yin and yang to everything. So, I mean, there's winners and losers in everything. And I mean, you can't feel bad about being on the winning side with some of this stuff. And you feel bad for the people that went through the bad stuff, but on the flip side, good things happen as well. So it's changed the world, forever in terms of the business climate, and like you say, how people are doing business now. I think the company was started in New Zealand, so Auckland, New Zealand. I'm actually there at the moment, waiting for some border restrictions to be able to fly back up to Colorado. But New Zealand actually had an interesting response to the pandemic and managed to eradicate the virus at that first spike around March, April 2019. And so then we ended up, after a short lockdown, we went back to the world as we knew it pre-pandemic for almost a year, which was kind of crazy. And so coming out of that, we said to the staff, well, look, we've been in a lockdown, and what would you like to see the business look like from a working standpoint, and surveyed them. And I think a lot of businesses are doing that now and getting all the learnings, but we actually did that,
well over a year ago, and then ran for a year with a kind of a hybrid situation, because the feedback that came through was, hey, everybody global, like holistically as a business, nobody wanted to work full-time remote, but nobody wanted to be in the office full-time either, and we kind of landed on a hybrid, 1 day a week, compulsory day in the office, and then the rest is work from home. So we've kind of had the luxury of seeing how that actually works for well over a year now, and it works really well. Mm-hmm. And I think the world is all heading that way. Everyone's kind of getting to those learnings as well. But working has now decoupled from the office, and you can move around. And I think we're starting to see other areas as well. I think our kids now, we've just had a thing come through from school saying, would there be interest in online learning and that type of thing, and we're probably seeing education decoupling from the classroom, and so that whole ability to work from everywhere now includes your kids potentially, and there's been a coming together of work and home, the Zoom calls with the kids walking across the background, and mm-hmm. Before the pandemic, that sort of stuff was, you'd keep work and family very separate. Now it's sort of intertwined. So, yeah, definitely really interesting times, and yeah, some goods to come out of it. I think mental health and awareness of that is way up, and yeah, some good stuff. So you're absolutely right. With the good comes, with the bad comes the good.
Yeah. So you said a couple things in that little paragraph there. Like, you are in New Zealand, waiting for some borders to open so you can come to Colorado. So you are a global company, and you are making a headquarters, or you've already made a headquarters here in the States, and you decided on Colorado here, which gets me excited because that's where I'm located. I'm located here in Colorado. I was born and raised in Colorado.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's exciting. Right. We love when things come to Colorado, and instead of one of the other hubs of tech. So why did you decide, being a global business, to move to the States instead of somewhere else, and specifically Colorado?
Yeah, really good question. So our first paying customer was offshore, and so we've kind of never looked back. We've only got 3% of our customers in New Zealand here, where I am at the moment. But there's definitely two big skews in the rest of the market. So that's Australia and the United States. And, so with that big skew, we've been driving growth, and it's just rapidly accelerating in the US. So it just made sense to then start to scale up there. The first, for almost 5 years of the business, we had no boots on the ground anywhere other than here in New Zealand, but we were scaling globally. So really effective inbound marketing and inside sales, and really building that model. As we've been moving up the food chain and selling to larger and larger businesses, then we've seen our need to have a boots on the ground presence, and so that really drove the US office based on the growth that we're seeing there. So that's why US. And then in terms of why Colorado, we did all of our homework. We overlaid where our customers are, around the US. That didn't really help because we've got customers across I think 32 states at the moment, and pretty evenly distributed. This is a global, widespread problem. So then all the other variables time zone crossover for calling between East and West, plus also back to New Zealand here, which at the moment is only 3 hours behind PST, 4 hours behind Mountain. So good time zone crossovers, cost of living, flight hubs, tech center, that type of thing. And then I think the final part, apart from the Colorado Economic Development Office gave us some funding to help scale up, so that was definitely an awesome carrot. But the big decider was, hey, where do we want to visit? Mm-hmm. you know, Colorado and New Zealand actually have some really big similarities in terms of the outdoor lifestyle and work hard, play hard, tech-centered, forward-thinking attitudes and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it all really just pointed to Denver, and so the rest is history. But I guess the crazy thing with that is we've had to do it all sight unseen because we haven't been able to travel, and now we've got an office there, we've got staff, we've hired, everything's been remote, and it's going to be awesome to be able to be up there in person pretty soon. But again, I guess coming back to that global change from COVID, you just couldn't have done that 4 or 5 years ago,
right?
And so now it's pretty accepted that you'll could hire people, onboard them, have them start, and never meet them in person until 6 to 12 months down the track, or whatever it is. So yeah, kind of crazy. But yeah, man, we're loving Colorado. Been accepted with open arms, and the people are awesome, and some great synergies. So I'm excited.
Nice. Well, when you get up here, you're gonna have to let me know. I'll get Jim, my CEO, and we'll take you out. Have some good food.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. Can't wait. I'll hold you to that, bud. I'll hold you to that.
Yeah, you do. You do, for sure. And I'll make Jim pay for it. He'll be happy to, by the way. So that being said, you have some people, you have staff in New Zealand, now you have staff in Colorado. You're a big culture guy. You have been on lockdown now for quite a while in New Zealand, and now you have staff halfway across the world. How do you handle culture with everything that's going on?
Yeah, that's the big topic right now. I think the way that you handle culture I don't think it changes in terms of the what you do. It's really about being very clear about your values and your drivers and the why behind what you do, all of that type of stuff. But it changes the how you do it in terms of digitally or in person. And I think this is just a kind of global problem at the moment. People are trying to navigate. We don't see each other in the office every day like we used to. So how do we do that sort of thing? But we've got the usual suspects around, a fortnightly all hands will get everyone on the call, and, the ability for me to be able to just kind of speak in, that type of thing, always leading off with our values and our whys and that type of thing. I think, it's been said around leadership, just pick 3 things and just keep saying the same things over and over. So trying to embed those in deeply, but then trying to get connection. So we look really hard at initiatives to get connection at a person-to-person level, as connecting people with the company and the vision, but also connecting people with each other, and so they can build relationship, because that's really where the culture engine room is. It's fine to have some values on the wall, that type of thing, but if people buy into those and believe those, and then the interactions that they're having with each other are reinforcing those, then that's where the magic happens. So yeah, there's no silver bullet for one single thing that we do, but we try and be a remote first approach. So if there are people in an office, all hands, for instance, even if everyone's in the office, everyone's at their computer sharing the same experience, as a webinar call, versus having a bunch of people in a room watching a TV and then everyone else is dialing in where they feel like spectators rather than participating, that type of thing. Lots of kind of cultural events, rituals across the business, shout outs, Slack channels, all that type of stuff. So probably a work in progress. There's so many new tools that are coming out which are exploring the space, as it's definitely a new area. But yeah, like I say, the messaging doesn't change. It's just how you kind of convey that and building a relationship. But as things open up, I think we'll continue to be hybrid. So exploring things like exchange programs between the offices to try and fill in that extra 10%. I think remote gets you 90% of the way, and if you've met in person, then the remote after that in-person meeting is that much stronger. Mm-hmm. So we're looking for ways to try and get the team to interact and rub shoulders and that type of thing, and augment what we're doing. So, yeah, watch the space. Talk to me in another year, Bud, and we might have a whole bunch of new learnings that we can kind of talk about. But yeah, it's exciting because I think it's people have a little bit like people just keep sending emails for requesting information and don't think about it. People just keep doing what they do in the office and don't think about it. And it takes an event like this to kind of shake up the status quo and people to rethink and go, well, actually, why do we do it this way?
Right.
Just because we always have doesn't mean that's the best way to do it. And, the remote piece is really interesting because I think, the millennial workforce now, or the millennial demographic is now the largest section of the workforce. They've become the biggest part of the bell curve. And there's always been some amazing qualities of the attitudes with the millennial workforce around kind of trying to think differently and do things differently and change up. And I think, that whole remote piece has been a big driver from them as well. So it's kind of forced the hands of maybe some of the older companies to go, oh, we have to go remote. And then the flip side is it's also showing people that have yearned for remote full-time that, oh, actually it's not the nirvana we thought it was either. We still want some real-world connection. So, yeah. Culture's number one. So always looking for ways to try and drive people to connect more and interact.
So here it's, before I was account executive, I was chief of staff, and that was part of my job was to help build and drive culture. And our biggest cohort of people is in Kenya, and all except for a couple of them are in Nairobi. And then our second biggest cohort is in the Philippines, and they're spread out all over the Philippines. So we were able to have our Kenya cohort get together a couple times and have a big gathering and do some fun things. But our Filipino cohort was not, for a couple reasons. Number one is because the distance that they were apart. And number two is, they're on pretty strict lockdown as well. So it was awesome to see the pictures and the videos that the Kenyans took, of them having just a great time and feasting together and, driving around on go-karts and going on zip lines and, doing just great fun things. And, our Filipinos are so happy for them. Like, that's great, that's awesome. But what can we do? So then they decided to get together on Zoom and have a meal together, which is awesome, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
So we can't wait for them to get off lockdown so that we can do something great and fun for them. But like, how do you manage that? We still want our Kenyans to get together and have a great time, but we don't want our Filipinos to feel left out. It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, no, totally. We share all of those sorts of challenges. I think what it really boils down to, and this is a big thing that I people hear me say it a lot, is it's around the people focus. If one of the number one values that we have is around kind of that family and people first approach of, like family is a place that you create a safe environment for people to grow, and we're all about improving lives and trying to help people grow. So how do you get people to connect? And the real number one thing is that people actually care. Like if people know that the other person actually cares and you build trust, then that's where that relationship is formed, and it kind of bridges a lot of the distance. So we do a lot of things around, we have what we call micro reveals, like we'll get everyone to take a photo of the inside of their fridge, and everyone has to kind of guess whose fridge it is, or artwork or album covers, whose top 3 albums is this, just little windows into, the person, so people can get to know the person, and some of those things that you might get with chats around the water cooler, you miss out on remotely. So we'll try and backfill some of those types of things with these little events and having rituals. We'll celebrate. We've got some funny rituals around when someone joins the company. After they've, first 90 days, they get awarded a mug with some saying that they've become known for, and we'll send that anywhere around the world to them, and they'll accept it on Zoom and the rest, so just trying to find ways to still build connection. It really comes down to connection, because culture isn't just, eating and go-karts and whatever else.
Right.
Culture is every part of how you interact with other people inside a business, from, working to that sort of thing. And I think that's what we're really big on, and trying to get that through. The culture is how we do business, not just, the fun stuff. It's not like, this is your work and then this is the culture side. It's everything. So, trying to get a consistent, clear message in everything I'm saying from the top as a leader around, these are the things that are important to us and that we value, like our values, FILES, acronym FILES, so, family, integrity, learning, execution, speed, making sure we're pushing those out and what that means to people. But then, I think I've heard Simon Sinek say that your values, those are adjectives. They're describing the types of kind of feelings and things that we want to see. But your culture is kind of that describes the culture using adjectives. But the way you create that culture is verbs, right? Like doing words. Like what's the behaviors that you actually have to go about to create a culture that lives up to the values that you've described that you want to see, so we're very deliberate about that with, putting together a culture code, and these are the types of behaviors, and these are the rituals, and these are the things that as a company we commit to doing, because we know that by doing that, verbs, doing words, that will lead to our values of the describing words of how the culture is. And so it's an ongoing journey, but that's kind of the fun of it too, right? Like it's this organic thing, and as a company grows, it changes as well, because every stage of company growth has different challenges. And going from a small company where everyone knows everything that's going on about the company, like if there's 5 of you in a room, you kind of know everything, up to like 50s and 100s. There's these milestones where you start to compartmentalize, and not everyone knows everything that's going on anymore, and you have to get more layers and systematic about things and less organic. And so be a lot more deliberate about like, how do we communicate culturally throughout the business, inside departments and externally, that type of thing. So I think that's all part of the journey and the learnings of running a high growth company, because as a founder you've got to grow faster than the company. Like if a company's growing really rapidly, it requires a different type of leadership at each of those stages, and so as a founder you've got to kind of stay ahead of that and learn and grow faster than the company. So that's all part of it.
That's fantastic. I'm gonna have to go back and watch the last 10 minutes of this when we're done and take some extra notes. No, that was great. Going back on that, like you said a lot of stuff in there that has to do with with leadership and culture kind of intertwined. But when it comes to leadership, and you answered some of those questions there, but I kind of want you to expand on that a little bit. What makes for a good leader? Kind of piggybacking off of some of the things you just said. Can you expand a little more on what makes a good leader? Being a multi-exit founder, you've had to learn some more things than what you just said.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a loaded question. There's been like books and all sorts written on it. But I think for me, the single biggest thing in great leadership is trust. Like if your team 100% trust that every decision that you as the leader are going to make is in their best interests, or in the best interests of the company, which by proxy is in their best interests, then they'll be on board with that, even if they're not necessarily agreeing with it, because everyone knows there's tough decisions that have to be made along the way. So, if you can earn the deep trust of the team, and then you can really clearly articulate a clear vision and direction of where we're going, then that is a really powerful combination, because you've got people that are coming, you've got the vision. It's your job as the leader to say, look, there's an awesome mountain over there, let's go climb it. And then, gather the team around you to go on the journey to climb that mountain. And most of the fun is, the climb. You're only at the top for a short period of time, and it's sort of the ridges and the valleys on the way up the top, the banter, the hard slog, that's where all of the memories and the fun is. Ringing the bell at the NASDAQ, that is only a snippet in time, and it'll be a great memory for companies, but that's not what we're probably talking about on our rocking chairs 50 years from now. It'll be the tough times and the journeys and that sort of thing. So as a leader, you've got to point to that mountain, say, this is the mountain that we're going to climb. Who wants to come with me on the journey? And then, gain their trust, so that when you get to those, forks in the road, that your decision on which one you're going to take, right or wrong, everyone's behind you on that to get to the greater vision of the top. So, there's obviously a whole bunch of just good hygiene management in terms of communication and all that sort of thing, but I think it really just boils down to connection and relationship, like everything else. It's people doing life with other people, and so gaining their trust, gaining their respect based on your decisions, and being in the trenches with them. So I'm really big about kind of bottom-up leadership, empowering the team around you to be able to stand on your shoulders. Like if you have to be the smartest person in the room on every topic, you're going to be a pretty big bottleneck. So there's the old adage that great leadership is hire smarter people than yourself. Like that, this is so true. You just have to kind of get the greatest team around you possible, and then get them together, all executing in the same direction and moving forwards. But that can take, that takes a lot of humility to be able to get people to stand on your shoulders, and there's no room for big egos in leadership and trying to be at the top and top-down leadership. You kind of just become a bottleneck that slows the growth of the company. If you can empower people to be their best at what they can do and live their best lives, then, everyone benefits. And so that's my catch cry everyone hears me saying around the company, is you grow great companies by growing great people. So we're just all about growing great people, and the company should grow great just by virtue of having great people inside of it that are getting better and better as well. So, a few things in there. I mean, what makes a great leader? Like I say, there's been podcasts and books for decades on that type of stuff. But yeah, I think that's, for me, it's all about people, trust, and clear, concise vision.
So I was going to ask you about some of your volunteerism, but your volunteerism, or your volunteering, what you do to volunteer outside of work, it kind of seems like that coincides with what you do in work. You like to mentor people. You are a mentor for the Business Mentors of New Zealand. You're a mentor for Young Enterprise, but that's what it seems like you do in work as well, like in your own business. There's a quote that I read of yours, and it says, "You always have something to give back, and helping others to be successful in their journey whilst you are on your own journey is the best way to achieve true success in business." Seems like, just with this talk, like that is how you live your life. You're giving back. There's got to be something, to me, it seems, that happened, or somebody that was prominent in your life that helped you, that kind of brought that out of you. Or is it just the way that you've always been? Was there somebody that you met, or is that just the way that you have always been? Have you always just been somebody that's given back?
Yeah, good question. I think you're right. There's definitely a driver around the mentoring and wanting to give back, and I think that was part of the journey. I touched on it a bit around kind of coming out of Zyber and having a co-founder and moving to a single CEO. I went on a journey for a couple of years of like almost refinding myself and the business a little bit, in terms of, because, you know, that, again, I said just before, that each stage of a business requires a different type of leadership. That also requires you as a leader to kind of take on potentially a different identity. And I came in with the identity of a technical co-founder, and had to grow into an identity of a CEO, single founder. And then in tandem with that, I was trying to find the driving why of the business. Everybody says, look, you've the best way to start a business is to solve your own problem. And we did that. We had a problem in Zyber and solved it, and took it to market. I kind of disagree that it's the best way to start a business. I think it's the best way to validate a product, because you already have a problem that you've solved. But it's not the best way to come up with a driving why, you know. And for those first couple of years where I was scaling up and raising capital and starting to hire, it's like, well, what's getting the staff out of bed in the mornings to come to work? Is it collecting documents? You know, like, and I realized that, you know, the driving why, it actually came about, there was an aha moment when my accountant sent me an email saying, hey, can you send me a whole bunch of stuff and sign these forms? And I was just like, well, A, you should know better, because, hey, FileInvite, you know. But B, I was just like, well, no, you're just outsourcing your problem to me. You know there's a better way, but you know, you just can't be bothered, and you're making it the end client's problem to have to get stuff back. And I kind of realized we're going into bat to improve the lives of the billions of people that get emails from businesses every day, forcing them through this really painful piece. And so I was like, okay, we're about improving lives. And then I started bringing together my personal, you know, why of that whole mentoring and helping give back. That kind of came together with the business in terms of, well, we're improving lives, and then, you know, we're improving the lives of our customers, and our customers. We're also improving our own lives within the business, of the staff, helping them on their career journeys, and, you know, on that type of thing. So it kind of is the same inside and outside the business, and it kind of just became freeing because it's like, well, it's the same driver inside and out, and you kind of just get this flow that's happening. So yeah, I couldn't pinpoint exactly where it came about. I think I probably have always been this way, but there have been some pivotal people in my life. I think there was definitely a turning point, well, not a turning point, but a really poignant moment where someone who was mentoring me way back when I first started that first company in during architecture school, and had no idea what I was doing. He was my accountant at the time, and he was a big, similarly wired. He was about trying to help young people get established in business and get ahead and that type of thing. And, I remember there was some business discussions, and there was somebody who said, "Oh, I don't want to be like that guy." And that was through the lens of, like, he's an accountant and he doesn't charge very much money because he's always trying to help people out. And, I want to be financially successful. But then this accountant, his name is David, he actually passed away on Christmas Eve quite a few years back after a battle with cancer. And the next day there was hundreds and hundreds of tributes on his Facebook page of the impact that he'd made and the things that he'd done for people. And it was then that I realized, look, it's not how much you can charge your clients that really makes the difference at the end of the day. It's the impact that you make on people and the legacy that you leave. So that's left a lasting impression on me, and I definitely weave that into everything I do. And you can have your cake and eat it too, because if you can improve lives and have people going on the journey with you, and like I said, you grow great companies by growing great people. If everyone's going on that journey, you're going to build a massive legacy of a company as well. That's going to be hugely successful, and that's going to be impacting as well. So it's kind of the core of everything that I do, is trying to bring those two things together and make a difference on all fronts.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. Because in this day and age, you're seeing a lot and hearing a lot about, I have to get mine. It just has to be bigger and better and more money. Do what you have to do to get more. And you just don't have to have that mentality. I mean, you can be a good dude, you can do it right, and you can still grow a high growth business and be well. I mean, it's obvious you have headquarters on 2 continents, and you're a worldwide business. So good on you, man. That's great.
Yeah. No, it's exciting. I think, like we said, the world's changed with COVID and the way we're working. There's different drivers. People are reassessing things. If business can do the same, it's just not mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. You can grow an amazing high growth company that's significant and have people love, what they do and leveling up and love coming to work. And yeah, you absolutely can have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah,
so
it's great. Well, and I look forward to seeing where this goes and what you do, and when everything kind of starts to loosen up there in New Zealand, what you can do as far as with your people, and then when you come to Colorado and finally meet your cohort of people over here, what kind of fun things you can do with them. But we've been at this thing for about an hour, so I think we'll go ahead and land it. So I'm going to ask you the same couple of questions that I ask everybody that's on this program to finish this thing out. And that is, what advice would you give to founders or soon-to-be founders that are going to be watching this program?
Give it a go. I think, like if you think you want to give something a go, just give it a go. Like, you can't wait until all of the traffic lights are green before you leave the house. You've just got to see that first one and know that some are going to be red, some are going to be green, but it's going to be a journey, and you're going to go on it. Nothing's ever as, things always seem worse thinking about it than actually doing it. If you think about some of the scariest things you've done, thinking about it's pretty scary, but once you've done it, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Once you're in it, you just make it work. So, Jeff Bezos has got his regret minimization framework of how he decided to leave his Wall Street job and start Amazon. And he basically fast forwards to the end of his life and says, with this decision, which one would lead to the least amount of regret at the end of my life? And I think always giving stuff a go is probably going to be the path of least regret. So give it a go, believe in yourself, don't give up. Grit and determination is, grit, determination and execution are probably the key, ingredients for success, not just a great idea. So, you can do it, give it a go.
Nice. And then finally, what is the best way for our viewers to get in touch with you if they so wish? Hit me up on LinkedIn, so James Sampson, and or the website, obviously, FileInvite.com, to check out what we do. So I love talking to other founders, helping people along the way. I've hit up so many that are further ahead on the journey than me, and hit them up for some advice, and love to pay it forward to do the same. So yeah, reach out and get hold of me. Nice. I may have to get a hold of you to talk about some more culture stuff, because that was gold. I'm telling you, man.
Absolutely.
That was awesome.
Love to.
Yeah. So, all right, my friend. Well, thank you for your time, and you have a really great day in the future over there in New Zealand.
Yeah. Thanks, bud. It's been fantastic. Loved it, and looking forward to getting up there. Well, I should be there in the new year, so I'll hit you up for that beer, and we can talk some more.